Hello, everyone. So, I have brought to you chapter number 5. It's a short and easy extension of chapter number 4 that we just finished. So, I am going to share my screen with you in a second. Just a second. I'm going to try to get to my PowerPoint slides. Here we go. And this is where we are. Okay. So, what we are going to discuss today is called activity-based costing. In simpler words, sometimes we also call this chapter ABC, activity-based costing. So it is a system which is going to concentrate on allocation of overheads or indirect costs, as we call, okay, using an activity-based costing systems. In this chapter, we are going to try to focus on companies that produce multiple products. Therefore, they need a costing system that is going to allocate indirect costs based on different resource demands of each product. So we are going to, okay, let's just go to the next one first. We are going to help us. I'm going to move this to the right side so that I have this open. Okay. So this one basically is going to talk about advantages of ABC system. It can help companies make better decisions about pricing in their product mix. It can also help in providing more accurate information about how different products and services use resources. So basically better for managerial decision making in terms of what is the true cost of each product, which product is more expensive to produce, which product is more profitable, etc., etc. Okay. So we are going to compare and contrast the system that we learned in chapter number 4, which is called a traditional costing system. We also call it a single pool cost allocation system or a simple method. There are several names given to the traditional system. So the traditional system, as you learned in job order costing, is a single pool cost allocation system. Okay. It uses a single indirect cost rate to allocate cost to all the products, which may or may not be the right thing to do if company has a variety of products, because different products consume activities at different rates, and therefore traditional costing is not a very good allocation system. The poor allocation might lead to poor managerial decisions, and basically traditional system uses broad averages because it combines all type of overheads. For example, rent and electricity and depreciation and taxes are all combined together and allocated using a single rate, which may or may not be right for the company. So what is right for the company, okay, is to identify the key activities. What are the different activities the company spends money on, assign dollar amounts to each of these activity pools, as we call them, and then find a proper driver for each one of them. Hopefully this slide would be more clear when I show you a numerical example, but this is how we go. Okay. It is important to stop for a moment, although you would not be doing it in this uh, example and course yet, but in real life, it is important to understand the importance of the drivers that you have chosen. For example, if you are trying to allocate your factory rent to different products, doing it on the basis of, let's say, labor hours may not be right, but doing it on the basis of square footage occupied might be a better driver choice. Okay, so we'll be a little conscious of the driver choice. Now let us go to the numerical system, a numerical example that we have in mind for you. Okay, sorry. Okay, So here is our example. We have a furniture company that makes tables and chairs. You are given some data. I'm going to move to a brighter color pen. All right. So company makes 1,000 chairs currently and 500 tables currently. Okay. Remember, the total cost of each table and chair is a combination of, you know this from before, direct material plus direct labor plus manufacturing overhead. Okay. Direct material and direct labor are direct costs and they are given to us and we do not have to worry about allocating it. These are the direct costs of the chairs and these are the direct costs of the tables. Okay. What is to be allocated, which is the main point of the question, is manufacturing overheads. Question says you have $60,000 of total overhead, which is going to be split equally between two different pools. $30,000 allocated into machine setup and 30,000 into assembly activity, which is a total of 60,000. Okay. For each of these so-called activity pools, you are also given allocation base. Setup of machines is going to be allocated to two products on the basis of number of setups, but assembly cost would be allocated based on direct labor hours per product. Again, this language is a little bit cryptic. You'll understand it better when we go to the numerical example. Okay. Company currently uses a traditional costing system. Remember, a traditional costing system or a simple method is a single driver based system. Let us erase this so that we can write more. Okay. The traditional system is tracing the indirect costs on the basis of direct labor hours. Okay. So we will do that shortly. Okay. You are given two questions. One is calculate the per unit cost of each product under traditional system and then repeat the same thing, calculate the cost of each product under the activity based costing system. So traditional system you are familiar with, you should be able to do it, but let us try to do it together. I have just copied the information from the previous page so that you know what we have. Okay. Here is a traditional overhead allocation for you. What does that do? It takes $60,000 and divides it by total number of direct labor hours. Now, this calculation is showing you how we got to the total number of direct labor hours. Notice that chairs take 1 hour each. So if I make 1,000 chairs and each chair takes 1 hour, then I would be taking a total of, 1,000 direct labor hours to make all the chairs. Similarly, if I make 500 tables and each table requires 2 hours, then I multiply and I say I would be requiring 1,000 hours in making the tables. Total number of hours used by the company as a whole, tables plus chairs, equals to 2,000. Now I divide this one. Remember, my budgeted overhead rate calculation was budgeted overhead dollar amount, as I had done in chapter number 4, divided by budgeted direct labor hours, which is what I'm doing here. So I come up with a rate of $30 per direct labor hour. Okay, this is our step 1 in job order costing, which we have performed. Okay, what is our step 2? Apply the overhead. How do we do it? Okay, budgeted overhead rate, which we calculated in this question, multiplied by actual direct labor hours consumed. So for chairs, chair consumed 1 hour each. So 1 times the rate. Tables consumed 2 hours each. So 2 times the rate. Now, third step, I'm ready to put together direct material plus direct labor plus applied overhead for each product and come up with the per unit cost of the product under traditional costing. So this is what I have under traditional costing for chairs. Why? 20 of material, 10 of labor, plus this 30 that I just allocated of overhead. So 20 plus 30 plus 20 plus 10 plus 30, I'm sorry, gives me 60. Similarly, I have 50 plus 20 for tables, and then I have allocated $60 of overhead, so a total of 130. We'll remember these numbers because we are going to compare them with the activity based costing. So what have we learnt on this slide? Using a single overhead, which was direct labor hours. Okay. Traditional overhead is giving us $60 per unit cost for chairs and $130 per unit for tables. Now, I just copied the information again. Now, I also refreshed your memory about saying $60,000 of overhead is split equally between the two pools. So now these are given two pool numbers. Pool 1 has $30,000 in each, okay, to be divided on the basis of number of setups. So let us figure out the number of setups. I have a second pool, which is called assembly, $30,000 in that pool also, to be divided on the basis of direct labor hours. Direct labor hours, how many we have, we already know, but let's start doing this. So let us first figure out the setup allocation. Notice I have 10 setups in chairs and 20 setups in tables. So total number of setups I have is 30. Okay, so I divide this number by 30. Okay, and I said $1,000 per setup. Okay, I did exactly the same thing as I did on the previous slide. I took the dollar amount and I divided it by the base, except that the dollar amount and the base are now split into two. Okay, how do I allocate this? Once I have the rate, I do the step number 2. Number of setups used by chairs multiplied by the rate. Remember, this was my step number 1. This used to be my step number 2. How do I apply the overhead? The method remains the same. Okay. Budgeted overhead rate multiplied by, in this case, number of setups. Okay. So $10,000 are now assigned to the chairs. Okay. I move forward. I do the same thing for the tables. Remember, I have 20 setups consumed by the tables. 20 setups multiplied by the rate per setup gives me $20,000, okay, that I have allocated to the tables. Okay. I do exactly the same thing for assembly. I take the dollar amount and I divide it by the number of labor hours. Can you recall? Let me erase this one. Can you recall how did we come to this 2000 total labor hours? Remember, we said 1000 chairs made 1000 chairs, each chair requiring 1 hour. Plus, I made 500 tables, each table requiring 2 hours. So the combination gives me 2000 direct labor hours. You with me? Okay, continue. Now I say, remember, I have split equally. So I have $30,000 in my assembly pool. And now I divide it by total direct labor hours and I get $15 per direct labor hour. Now I have the rate. What do I do? As before, I apply or allocate, as the case may be. Apply and allocate mean the same thing. Okay. For chairs, because I have used, remember, 1000 chairs, each chair using 1 hour. So 1000 hours allocated $15 per hour. Similarly, for tables, 1000 hours, okay. Recall, 1000 hours came from 5000. Oops, this pen is not working very well. 500 tables multiplied by 2 hours per table gave me 1000 total hours used by tables. Okay. So 1000 hours, sorry, at the rate of $15 gives me $1,500,000 allocated to chairs. Okay. So now what do? Now we are ready to calculate the per unit cost as before. Okay. So we say, let us take the overhead assigned to the chair under the two pools. Okay. Setup chair got this much. Okay. Tables got this much. Okay. From assembly, chairs got this much and tables got this much. So we are just kind of putting them all together for each product. So the total amount of overhead allocated to chairs is 25,000 under the two pools. Total amount is 35,000 for the tables. Okay. Once I have 25,000 and 35,000, I am allowed to divide it by the number of chairs made and number of tables made. So I know this is per chair and this is per table. As before, I say total cost of any product is direct material given to me in the table up there, direct labor again given to me, and overhead that I just applied. So 20 and 10 came from here, and this 25 that I have put just came from here. Similarly, for, let me erase this one. Total cost of table, these two numbers came from here, 50 plus 20, and then 70 per table came from my overhead applied. Okay. Final thing that we are doing is to compare, recall from the previous slide that 60 and 130 is what we allocated under the traditional system to chairs and tables respectively. Now we are allocating 55 to chairs and 140 to tables, meaning under the new system, chairs got undercosted and tables got overcosted. Okay, why? Under the old system, we were taking entire 60,000 and splitting it on the basis of labor hours. Under the new system, we split 60,000 into two. And notice this. Tables consume a lot of setups and therefore they should be charged a little bit more. So that is the logic on the basis of which activity-based costing is allocating a little bit more to tables rather than the traditional system. So here we are going to kind of do the summary comparison. Traditional costing basically assumes that all the overheads are driven by labor hours, which may or may not be right. For example, setup may not be driven by that. ABC, on the other hand, recognizes the complexity of each product and therefore is going to lead to a small amount of cost allocation differences and therefore lead to better pricing of products, better decisions, etc., etc. And so this is all we have for you guys. Have a nice day. We'll see you soon.